Hello folks, I hope that you're having just a great and safe day today. Today I'm bringing to you something a little different from my Living with HD. I'm actually going to do a review for you, which is what my channel typically does. It reviews classics in science fiction, fantasy, and horror. So today what I thought I would do for you is, recently this past week I encountered a short story by Octavia E. Butler. It's called The Evening, the Morning, and the Night. And it was written in '87. It's set in the future after a new disease has come out. And this disease, when I was reading the book, struck me as being very similar to Huntington's disease, and how these people in this future sort of society were dealing with this condition. And then there's an afterword to this short story where Octavia Butler says that she did some research into various conditions, and she used Huntington's disease as the condition on which to base her short story. So I thought that this would be a great combination of basically the two things that I do on this channel. You know, the first thing I do on this channel is I take a look and I try to do reviews for older science fiction, fantasy, and horror works that we may have forgotten about, or that we may never have heard about. These sort of lost classics. That's where the name of the channel comes from. It comes from a quote from a 19th century philosopher from France who said that the worst thing about new books is they keep you from reading the old ones. And so the worst thing about new books is the name of my channel, because they keep us from reading the old ones. And I'm very, very inspired to go back and read some of these older things. And this is a short story from 1987 as a good example of an older time, an older area, not something that's being read by the modern generation. The second thing I do on this channel is my weekly Living with HD thing, as somebody who's 7 years into that. As a reminder, or if you're brand new to this, I have Huntington's disease. Huntington's disease is a genetic condition that's neurological in nature. It's degenerative. It'll attack over time, and it attacks three aspects of a person. It attacks their mind mentally. They will lose they'll think slower. They'll talk fast. They'll talk too poorly. It'll affect their mind. Their IQ will diminish, that sort of a thing. It will affect their mental health. They'll become more and more depressed, and there's some other sort of mental health issues that come along with it. And finally, it'll attack their body, and they will have palsies, physical choreas, they'll twitch, that sort of a thing. So it's sort of a three-pronged monster, and it doesn't affect anybody the same way. I have it in a very different way than my mother had it, whom I inherited it from. And I'm sure with her it ran differently than her dad. Who even though it's the same thing, and I have it differently than he did. That's just how it is. Everybody is a unique person. So before I take a look at this short story for you, I do have want to tell you a little bit about Octavia E. Butler, because that's the first time I've talked about her. So I got this from this collection called Dark Matter, which I've been doing for the rest of my channel. Dark Matter is a collection of material that was written by black authors in the last century. It was published about 15 years ago, right around the turn of the century. And the idea is for it to use as a place to inspire a new generation of black writers to see what's already been written in speculative fiction. There's fantasy in there, short stories, horror, and science fiction, and a couple of other speculative fictions that aren't truly in one of those three genres, that are also in this collection as well. And Octavia E. Butler is in there as well. She is a woman who has won 2 Hugo Awards. She was the second black person to win Hugo Awards. She won them for some short stories in back-to-back years in the mid-'80s. She also is the first black woman to win a Hugo Award, so she, which is given to by the fans for the best science fiction of the year, for novels, short stories, novellas, and those sorts of things. This short story that we're looking at, The Evening, the Morning, and the Night, was nominated for some awards but didn't win any. But again, it's 1987, and it's a very unusual short story, and one that's probably my second favorite from the collection after Charles Saunders' Gimli Songs. So I do like it a lot. It took me about 50 minutes to read. It's almost 30 pages in this oversized collection, and I'll link you to this collection below so you can take a look at it. Basically, what winds up happening in this short story is that we're going to be introduced to this character. She's a woman, and both of her parents have this future disease. which is a genetic condition, and because both of her parents have it, and it's just like Huntington's disease, it's dominant. She has it too, and she talked about when she found out that she had it. She tried to commit suicide, and she was very upset that her dad tried to kill her. There's some stigmas in this world. It's becoming more and more common. There are some stigmas in this future world about this condition and about what this condition can bring with it, and some of the issues. Her dad will wind up, it has a, near the end of the condition, it will have a sort of a disjointed separation from reality. That will cause the person to do some things that are criminal in nature. And in this case, his dad, her dad will kill his mom and then commit suicide afterwards. And they'll both die. She'll come home from school one day when she's 18 to both of her parents being dead. And again, both of her parents had this condition. She does too. So when she's in college, she goes away to college on a scholarship that's given to people of her condition. So she heads out to college, and she's focusing on studying biology, and she actually creates a small group of fellow people that have this condition because they're so biased. There's such a bias against them. There's such discrimination against these people who have this condition that they really can only they understand what it's like to live with it, and to live in this sort of abusive place in this future Earth against people who have this condition. So she'll actually create a home for these people, and she'll become sort of the home mother, if you will, of these people as well. Then she starts to date this guy, and they'll start exploring the condition of their disease, and they're going to get engaged. They're going to have and so much of the story is exploring the nature of this disease, what's actually happening in the world. What can or can't be done about it. But the entire short story, which is about 30 pages in this collection, was all about, it's 29, was all about this condition and these two people, herself and her love interest, specifically about the condition. Now, this condition is clearly, I think, an insert for racism, as my take on it. Not only did I identify with the medical condition as somebody who's living with this medical condition, sure, but I also see this again as racism. What's it like to live as somebody who's black in America, for example, a racist America? It's always hard, that's this, trying to explain to white people this is why black people hang out. This is with each other. It's because, right? They're the only ones who identify with that. And as an aside, that actually happened with me too. I was an international student to London when I was 30. I left. And I went to London for a year program. And while I was there, I actually spent more time with international students who were from America than I did with people that were there from the locals. And I didn't go, across the seas to spend time with my fellow Americans. I could spend time with my fellow Americans anytime I wanted to. But I had so much in common with them because we both were seeing things at the same time. We had some of the same stigma. Our biggest identity was an international student at that time. And since that was our biggest identity, that was and we were all going through this common experience, we shared, we hung out, and so forth. And so I spent more time with people from the U.S. than I did with students from the U.K. As a shared experience. So I understand what that's like to have that sort of a shared identity that you have and that you hang out with them. I understand why black people do it. I understand why people with a certain medical condition in this story do it. And those sorts of things. But clearly Octavia Butler is not just writing about this future neurological degenerative condition that's similar to Huntington's disease. But she is also writing about any sort of a discrimination and how people will tend to react to that. So it has a timeless message, I think, particularly in today's day and age of a lot of racism in America, and with the current racism sort of protests that are going on in a lot of different states and a lot of different places around America and around the world that have been inspired by it, like Canada, for example. This is, I think, a particularly cogent message that Octavia Butler would want to, I think, still have out there. And this is a story that speaks to people today. So there you are. I'll go ahead and leave you to it. I'll link you to it below the collection that this came from. I'm happy to talk with you about this further. If you have any questions or if you've read it, what did you think about it? I'm happy to kind of see what your take is on this short story. And then there that is. I'll leave you to it. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, please feel free to hit the subscribe button. I do a Living with HD review every Saturday. So I'll be doing, I've already got the next 2 already planned. And finally, I just want to thank you for taking some time out of your day and watching my video. We all have so many things happening in our lives and we're pulled in so many different directions, particularly in this day and age with COVID and all the massive number of things that are happening online in order to keep people attentions. So there's so many different things happening, right? So the fact that you spent this time with me, it's very humbling, and I really do appreciate that. Thanks again, and have a good one.